Hi, everyone. Bad response. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Good morning. How are you? Good. Thanks for coming out. I guess what would be considered early for South by Southwest? Anything before 1 p.m.? Did you all have a good time last night?
Yes.
Good. You having a good South by Southwest?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you spending time with us today. We've got a full day of programming here under Next Now, the Future of Media, which is co-presented by myself and Future Media Hubs. We've got 4 great sessions. This is the User Centric Era. If you're not supposed to be in this class, you should probably check your schedules. It's a college professor joke, sorry. Then we have the Future of Storytelling and Monetization, which is an awesome panel with really great people from around the industry and, frankly, around the world. And then after lunch, Trust and Relationships with Today's Audiences. Again, moderated by somebody from the Washington Post. Really great panel, really important topic given today's data environment and the use of AI. And then 4 o'clock, closing out the day with Using Data to Make Media Better, which is a panel that I'm moderating with a bunch of really great guests. And I'll talk a little bit about that now. We've got a really good panel here today. We've got 2 great, wonderful sponsors that we're working with. So Future Media Hubs and I collaborated to create this day of programming, but we could not have done it without the help of VideoAmp and Amagi. And in case you're wondering whether they just wrote checks, they did write checks. It was very nice of them. Thank you so much. But I did go to them because they've been long-term partners of mine. Both companies are helping revolutionize the way media is being practiced and being used right now. Amagi, through the way video reaches you wherever you are, wherever you go, really creating the underlying operating system, I think, of the future of video. And VideoAmp creating and revolutionizing the way we measure consumption and the way we look at media currency. And if you're in the United States, you probably know, or worked in media in the United States, you probably know that if there's something that needs revolutionizing in the US, it is most definitely our currency. We've had a monopolistic ecosystem for some time, and we are very desirous and needful of something to help us not just figure out how to count, but figure out how to measure what we want to count, whether that's effectiveness or outcomes or whatever. So I want to thank both our partners today for making this day possible, because it wouldn't have happened without them. Let's give them a round of applause really quickly. So just really quickly, how many of you have ever seen this map before or knew who I was before you came today? All right, that's a pretty high percentage. Thank you very much for your support. You know, I made this map for the first time about 5 years ago, about 4 years ago. And I did it back then not to, you know, really, I made it from one of the classes that I teach at NYU and Fordham. And what I did not mean to do was use it to predict anything. It was not meant to be a prediction of something that was coming. It was meant to be a pronouncement of something that already had happened. At that moment, back then, what I meant to say was big tech had already taken over media. This was not something that was coming down the pike. It was not a threat that was around the corner. It had already arrived. And I'll prove this to you. Who here has an iPhone? Who here has an Android phone? Who here has something else other than one of those 2 phones? 100% of smartphone operating systems on the planet Earth are controlled by 2 companies, right? If you need to get to consumers anywhere on the planet Earth, the only way to do it on mobile, and mobile is who here uses their phone is the first thing they touch in the morning? For me, it's something else, but I won't get into that, right? Who here's the phone is the last thing they touch before they go to bed at night? Right. It is the remote control of your life. And if you want to touch consumers and you want to get to them on their mobile phones, on the remote control that they use to program their own lives, the only way to do it is to go through 2 big tech gatekeepers, who, by the way, create ecosystems that are remarkably anti-competitive, right? And we're finding that out now. I have no problem with companies making money. I love to make money. But at the same time, there's a responsibility we have to make the marketplace, capitalist marketplace, competitive. That's basically what capitalism, or at least that's what I was taught, capitalism was made for. But this was true not just today, this was also equally true in 2020 when I made this first map. So this was not meant to be some kind of prediction of a future that was down the pike that might happen. It was meant to be a pronouncement that it had already happened. And since then, it's only gotten more true. The big tech Death Stars have only gotten bigger and more powerful, and the traditional media players have only shrunk in response to that. Not just from a market capitalization standpoint, but also from a kind of ingenuity and innovation standpoint. And I don't only mean, when I talk about traditional media, I don't only mean the Disneys and you want to start the countdown clock so I know where I am? Not only for the Disneys and the Paramounts and the Disco Brothers, which is what I call Warner Brothers Discovery, but also for Netflix. What was the last great innovation Netflix added to their ecosystem? Going from DVDs to streaming. Really. I mean, now they're adding ads. Like, that's a totally new thing, right? But really true from a technological or experiential standpoint. Yes, they've tweaked and they improve and they make improvements to their platform on a daily basis, but so does every tech platform and content platform on the face of the earth. That's not new. But there really hasn't been a tremendous amount of true innovation in traditional media since streaming happened. And they've basically seeded the media universe to these big tech Death Stars. What's interesting now is that this map is now beginning to predict a new, or announce a new set of outcomes that are happening around us. Apple's market cap has shrunk since the beginning of this year dramatically. Their products business is in real trouble, right? NVIDIA is now less than $500 million away from catching up to Apple in total market cap, and I'll predict to you today that by the end of this year, NVIDIA will surpass Apple in total market cap. Why? Because NVIDIA continues to innovate while Apple simply does not. They are copying Paramount Plus. They are copying Netflix. They are copying Spotify. They aren't making anything new. Well, actually, that's not true. They're making new lawsuits to prevent courts and regulators from getting them out of their anti-competitive practices every single day. Tim Cook's now main product is legal filings. That's where we are. And it's kind of dangerous for the media ecosystem, but I'll talk about in a minute how it's dangerous for everyone else. I do want to take a beat here, though, and talk about myself because I am a real bad narcissist. Or I'm actually a terrific narcissist. A couple years ago, I made this map. It really blew up. It turned into a set of opportunities for me that I never could have possibly anticipated. It changed my life, oddly. I have been given the opportunity to travel all over the world to speak at events like this. At Royal Television Society, at IBC, to companies in Germany and UK and France and Czech Republic and the Middle East. I've been given the opportunity to speak here at South by Southwest for many years now on thought leadership around media and innovation and the transformation of the media ecosystem itself. My career took off when I started publishing on a daily basis and putting out this content, these charts and graphs and these insights that I put out there. Last year was the peak of my career, or hopefully not the peak, but it was a high point in my career. I was at the top of my game. I mean, I had more business than I knew what to do with. I made more money than I had at any point in my corporate life without a corporate master, which is fucking awesome. I kind of helped invent a phrase called fractional executing that I think is really going to be a part of our ecosystem. It's not necessarily my phrase, but it's something I'm helping make popular in our world. And I was just at the top of my game, flying high. And then last July, I was diagnosed with cancer. Right at the, I'm running fast, man. I landed from Cannes Lion, where I had a great time. I got off a plane. Something bad happened to me physically. I went to the emergency room, and a couple weeks later, I had been diagnosed with cancer. I have follicular lymphoma, which is a very kind of, I wouldn't say benign, but very tame form of cancer. If you're shopping for cancer, it's the one to get. It's very treatable, it's very manageable. It isn't really curable, keeps coming back, but kind of like diabetes or some other of these symptoms, it is incredibly manageable, right? But then I got into treatment. I was fortunate enough to get into a clinical trial because in the bunch of you, who's here from Europe? Okay, wow. So a lot of you are not gonna get this part, but that's fine. We have something called health insurance here that costs a lot of money. So I was very lucky to get on, because I am a super privileged guy, I was very lucky to get into a clinical trial at Memorial Sloan Kettering on a monoclonal antibody called mosunetuzumab, which I shortened to Mosun because I just mispronounced mosunetuzumab. And it's a monoclonal antibody. It is not chemo. It is able to target and attack just cancer cells, right? And unlike chemo, it doesn't have the bad side effects of attacking your heart, attacking your bone marrow, or making you lose your hair, which for me, again, I'm a narcissist, very fortunate. And the treatment worked incredibly well. In fact, to a certain extent, too well. I had all these lymph nodes in my gut. I've been coming to South by for many years, and most of the years of the last half decade I've been coming here, I've been doing so in a decent amount of pain. I didn't know what it was. I had real digestive issues. And I went to tons of doctors, I took tons of tests, nothing showed it. Basically the results were everybody told me I had IBS, or sour gut, or basically I was an old Jew. Felt attacking, but whatever. That's because these lymph nodes had swollen inside my intestinal tract to the point that they were just kind of obstructing things moving around well. And so I would come to South by, have a great time, but then be in real pain and be very fatigued at the end of every day. As the Mosun started to work, the lymph nodes retreated. And since they had basically entwined themselves and embedded themselves in my intestinal tract, as they retreated, they tore tiny little holes in my intestinal tract, which released poison into my body cavity, which sent me to the hospital for a very torturous 3 weeks. I recovered, I got stronger, I was off the treatment because the doctors wanted to avoid this happening again. I got my strength back, and then a couple weeks ago, went back in hospital for a bowel resection to take care of the problem areas and avoid this happening again. When the doctor, this is a robotic procedure that blows up your belly so they can look around. And when they got in there, they found 2 areas of my bowel that had really been damaged beyond repair. But they also found that a lump of lymph nodes had basically swallowed and crushed my appendix, which is what caused the symptoms that probably got me diagnosed. So it was bad, but it was also good. So the doctor took out both 2 feet of my intestine and my appendix and all these different lymph nodes. But then I'm in the hospital, and if you spend any time in the hospital, you know, it's doctors and care workers are wonderful people, but it's a lonely, solitary, dehumanizing experience. And I'm alone at night thinking this is just gonna happen again, right? My father died at 61, which is just a few years older than I am right now. My grandfather died at 56, which is exactly how old I am right now. And that runs around your brain like a freight train at 3 in the morning, right? Sorry. But I got home last Friday, and I'm sitting there drinking a smoothie, sitting in my recliner, trying to recuperate, and my doctor called me at home on a Friday night, from his home on a Friday night, which, again, in the US is super fucking rare. And he said, I have news. I'm not just checking in, I have news. There is no cancer visible in your body anymore. Thank you. And you won't need treatment again for a very long time. So, great. It was awesome. Now, back to the presentation. In 2020 and 2021, the media ecosystem was at the top of its game. Everybody launched new streaming services, and they were all going crazy town. Disney launched the most successful entertainment product probably in the history of media, right? 10 million new subscribers in the first month. They surpassed Netflix in total worldwide subscribers in less than 36 months. Apple was the most valuable company on the planet Earth. Consumption of media and because of and despite the pandemic, consumption of media was through the roof. Ad impressions were through the roof. All the big tech companies were blowing up. All the old school media companies were blowing up. And they had all shifted from their traditional models to streaming without really understanding what that was going to do to their business model. In the US, most media publishers are wholesalers. Right? They go through cable companies or movie distribution companies to get to the consumers. And by moving to streaming, they moved from a wholesale model to a retail model. And none of them, not one of them, and I wrote this at the time, had any fucking idea what that meant. Going to retail, selling direct to consumer is a slog. It's a hard business. It's every day and every day and every day. And none of them understood what that was going to do to them. So they just moved their models over to this new ecosystem, and they really just took this overcharging of content through cable to an overabundance of subscriptions, of individual subscriptions, forcing the consumer to subscribe to too many things and overpaying again for a different source of it. But what they were doing was not really examining what was wrong with the business models that had got them to that point. Or really trying to diagnose the things, the sickness in the center of their companies. They really just put new lipstick on an old pig, right? They moved the overcharging subscriptions from cable to direct to consumer, and they ripped the rug out from underneath their ad business simultaneously. But it worked for a minute, so they kept at it. And consumption kept going up and to the right. Everybody was happy. Everybody was thrilled. And they convinced themselves that this kind of consumer behavior was going to continue forever unabated. And then in 2022, the media universe found out it had cancer. Subscriptions have now slowed to an absolute, subscription growth have now slowed to an absolute halt. They're almost non-existent. Last year, total subscriptions for premium streaming on the planet Earth grew only 10%. Churn in the premium subscription ecosystem has tripled in the last 24 months. In 2023, the entire premium streaming ecosystem added 165 million new subscribers. They lost 141 million subscribers. I teach at a business school. The technical term for that is a shitty business. This is not sustainable. And yet the MBAs who run the media ecosystem don't seem to realize that. Yes, the ad economy has bounced back to a certain extent, but that's like saying I'm a lot taller than I was in third grade, right? It's only year-on-year comps that make the advertising business look good today versus a couple of years ago. And frankly, it's only benefiting 4 companies. Google, who faces a huge headwind of their own regulatory issues. TikTok, who's about to be banned in the United States. I mean, I'm not making this up. Meta, who, yeah, they had a really good last year compared to the previous year. And they have a business, advertising. They have never diversified their revenue models, despite the fact that they had a really terrible couple of years. And that business model is going to hit the same brick wall the next time the ad economy takes a downturn. This is not a promise. This isn't a promise. This is truth. That will happen. They have no other way to go other than the ad model. And Amazon, who had a great 2023, but again, only by comparison to a really awful 2022. Where they lost $3 billion in 2022. They're just 1 year out from that, right? So yeah, to a certain extent, it is benefiting big tech, and it continues to benefit big tech. But it's not going to continue to benefit them the way that they have become addicted to. we left the last era of media. Oh, so the question is, I just blew my own punchline. The question is, why does the MBA community that sits in the ivory towers of the media industrial complex continue to behave the way it does? It's because they've convinced themselves that we're still in the last era, the top-down, gatekeeper-controlled era of media, which lasted for a very, very, very long time, right? From the middle of the last century to basically the first 10 years of this century. But we're not. We left that era 5 years ago. We are now, pretend like you see it for the first time. We are now in the user-centric era. The user-centric era is controlled by the consumers who change their suite of lifestyle subscriptions in their system settings on their smartphones, that first piece of glass we all pick up first thing in the morning, with swipes of their thumbs based on their moods on any given day. I don't like it, swipe left. I don't like it, swipe left. I'm done binging. Who here has ever subscribed to something to watch one show or one movie and then cancel before the next billing cycle? Yeah, you're all the problem. You now have all of the power, right? And by the way, there are great advantages to this shift, right? Giving the users and giving the consumers and giving the audiences the power of over media really does help create a more equitable ecosystem, a more equal exchange of values between the users and the platforms that they use. But it also has created just an infinite amount of chaos in this ecosystem, where consumers really can't find what they want to listen to or watch or play. And the platforms themselves are spending the same money over and over again to get the same consumers back. 30%, almost 40% of consumers are now what are called serial churners. You all raised your hand. They subscribe to something, they cancel, they come back 6 months later, they binge, they cancel, they come back 6 months later. That's a very expensive revolving door, right? And it is not sustainable in any way, shape, or form. In fact, to a certain extent, not only is it not safe for our environment, both figuratively and literally, it is not a financially sustainable model. It has created this incrementalism of layers of services and platforms and experiences that is unnavigable. Who here has gotten home at the end of a hard day at work, poured themselves a glass of wine or lit up a joint, sat down to watch something, logged onto a platform, can't find something to watch, logged onto a different platform, can't something to watch, logged onto a different platform, can't find something to watch? Raise your hand if that's an experience. This ain't good. And mostly it's a shitty user experience. So the big tech Death Stars and all the traditional media players who have followed them into what they think is the new system of governance around media have created this terrible user experience. They're tech companies. This should be their home run. This should be easy, just table stakes for them. But the user experience gets worse every day. And it's really having an effect on the way consumers see their media, both from an entertainment standpoint, but also from a just true belief that the media ecosystem is there for them when they need it. What does this look like? This looks like people under age of 34 having 16 total media services, paid and free, that they use on a regular basis, but only half of them being considered must-haves. This means for consumers over 35, including families with kids, and especially families with kids, having 11 total media sources, but less than half of them being considered must-haves. Less than half of the media platforms we use on a regular basis, we consider media platforms we need. That means most of it's garbage. It's waste. It's just extra. Users pick up their phones in the morning on their bedside and they look at that home screen and they decide which apps to remove. which apps spark joy and which apps don't. And they just press hard on the ones they don't like anymore and they throw them in the trash. Literally, they throw them in the trash. Used to, we would change channel, but the channel was always there. You could always go back to it. Now, we change channels and it's in the trash and it's completely out of your consideration set. You know, users have 16 apps, but they only really like 8. Users have 11 apps, but they really only use 5. And this has created an unsustainable marketplace for ideas. What's interesting, this is a GWI survey of 500,000 people, Gen Zers, crucially, 17 to 26 across a bunch of different countries: Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Italy, Japan, Singapore, the UK, and the US. They asked them, what are your top priorities when you stream? And what you can see is cost doesn't come into it until out of the top 4. Neither do ads, right? The top 4 considerations are the relevancy of the content, the number of exclusive originals, the refresh rate on that content, and the size of the lake that I get to swim in of content when I get there, the library size. Content, 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 content. In today's consumers' hierarchy of feeds, when they're considering, by the way, this is how consumers look at their media suite. They don't see it as a set of binary choices between gaming and music, between audio and video, between social and audio and video and gaming. Again, it's all on that same remote control, right? So when they look at their hierarchy of feeds, they go back to this and they're like, absolutely, who has the most relevant content for me? So even in this user-centric era, even in this era of a paradox of choice, even in this era of layered incrementalism of platforms and contents and experiences, content is still king. Absolutely. And it will be, if you're in the media business, the quality of your content, the amount of your content, the relevancy of the content, the context of the content, these will all be crucial on a moving forward basis. However, the average consumer now has an average of 100 logons that they use on a regular basis. 100 passwords that they have to remember. It's over. Who feels overwhelmed by the number of logons that they have? It's out of control. And this creates just when you want to know what the paradox of choice looks like, it looks like this. And it gets worse every day. Apple just added a new sports app because I needed a new sports app, right? Apple's not doing that because they thought there was a white space for sports apps in the world. They're doing it because they're desperately trying to fix their business and they need a new ad business to replace the products business. This is the sole reason. The problem they're looking to solve isn't the consumers. It's theirs. That's not how business works. Who here hasn't worked at a startup or has ever worked in investing in startups or any of that kind of stuff? Raise your hand. The first thing we ask when we talk to a new startup is, what consumer problem are you looking to solve? These companies are no longer looking to solve consumer problems. They're looking to solve their own economic problems. And that shit ain't gonna work. It just isn't. And this is how you know. Noticed here, I chose 2022 versus 2023, not 2023 versus 2021 or 2020 when lockdown was happening and we were in a different ecosystem. Consumption between 2022 and 2023 is down a half an hour. A half an hour. By the way, social media is up. Everything else is down, including podcasts. So if you're convincing yourself this is all about lockdown life ending and we're all roaming around the world, we all listen to podcasts in our cars and on our walks and our jogs and all that kind of stuff. Audio is down, podcast is down, gaming is down, video is down. Every single category of media except social media, which is flat for the first time ever, everything else is down. And part of this is, fuck, I just don't need all this media, man. I just don't need it. I have other things I can do, like cook. Or like just focus on 2 or 3 different services versus 12 or 13. So when you see consumers beginning to reject your problem, and 2.4% may not seem like a lot, but up until last year, or up until 2022, media consumption never went down. It never went down. So a drop of almost 2.5% is a huge paradigm shift. It is cancer. It is a problem, and it must be properly diagnosed, and it must be properly treated. Otherwise, this is all going to fall apart, and we can talk about what happens on the other side of that. The main reason for this is that the big players in media, the C-suite oligarchy that controls the media industrial complex, has held on to one of the main tenets of the last eras of media, which is this zero-sum war game that I only win when all others lose, right? I can't be the best if anybody else is competing directly alongside of me. And God forbid I share information and best practices with my competitors and make the entire ecosystem better for everybody. No, 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 no. I have to put walls around all my gardens, right? I have to protect what's preciously mine. And they've really convinced themselves that data is the next oil. Who's here has heard that phrase? Data is the new oil, right? So yeah, kind of, okay, a little bit. But at the same time, this data being walled behind all these, walled in these gardens is really problematic. It's created a lack of interoperability that is a huge part of the issue that consumers are facing right now. Content is king, but data is the new bloodline. However, I don't think it should be a profit center the way that the oligarchy thinks it should be. This is them trying to keep their precious gems to themselves so they can sell them off to the highest bidder. And this has really helped and benefited big tech in the last few years, especially Meta, Amazon, and Google, but all of big tech. And data is not necessarily a profit center the way that I see it. To me, it is the bloodline. It is the monoclonal antibody that we need to treat the cancer that the media ecosystem has. It is the cure for what ails us. And again, if you think that big tech isn't going to be affected by certain downturns in the market over the next couple of years, look at Apple. Who a year ago thought Apple would face any kind of headwinds, would be caught up to, would be surpassed by Microsoft as the most valuable company on the planet, or caught up to by a company called NVIDIA, who probably nobody heard of a year ago, right? By the way, 3 years ago, I predicted when they were worth about $600 billion, just $600 billion, I said NVIDIA was going to be the next trillion-dollar Death Star. It is. It's now a $2.2 trillion Death Star. And by the end of this year, like I said, they will very likely surpass Apple in total market value. This media ecosystem has convinced itself that it can manage its way to improvements it needs, that it can make cuts to get itself to the right place, that it can add ads or rebundle itself, and that's going to take care of everything. This is not true. It will not work. We cannot incrementally make changes to make the improvements we need to cure the cancer that's inside the media ecosystem. It will not be effective. It will not attack the cells that it needs to attack. We need radical transformation. We need radical treatment. And I'll talk about what that means in a second. Before I get there, this fragmentation of experiences and ideas and platforms and content is not going to get better. I'm a huge fan of the creator, or what I like to call community economy. I think community is the new oil, not data. The passion of your cult is going to be the value of your enterprise, not the quality of your data. I think your data needs to be high quality, but if you keep your data behind a brick wall, it's going to suck. Data gets better when it commingles with other data, when it gets compared to other data, when it creates many points of light to create a profile for consumers. So the creator economy is, I think, a great thing, and it's going to grow like weeds. Goldman Sachs says it's going to be a $500 billion business by 2027. I think it'll be $1 trillion business by the end of this decade. But think about what happens when you add not just thousands, but millions of new channels of content and data to this ecosystem. Think about how much more unnavigable it becomes when we go from thousands of channels to tens of millions of channels. Yes, there's more money, but it's being spread more thinly. Yes, there's more great content out there, but it's being watched by smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller communities of people. And this is going to create even more paradox of choice, an even greater system of befuddlement for the consumer every time they pick up that piece of glass in the morning and try to log on. And I have to watch this TikTok, and I have to watch this television show, and I have to listen to this podcast, and I have to read this article. Oh my God, I produced a show called Portlandia a number of years ago, and there's this great sketch. Did you read it? Did you read it? Did you read it? Did you read it? I don't know if you've seen it. But now it's like, did you watch it? Did you see it? Did you listen to it? I mean, it's just, you can't keep up. And so what the consumer does is, I'm out. Rather than trying to keep up, I'm just going to go to the same old shit that I listened to when I was a kid. And by the way, if you need examples of this, the top music on Spotify is all nostalgic stuff. Most of the most consumed content on streaming right now is all nostalgic stuff. And it's because it's safe, it's knowable, it's comfort food. I don't have to worry about discovery because I already know its name. I watched 4 episodes of Friends on Nickelodeon last night. Rather than trying to log on my computer and trying to find something to watch, I just turned on the television and watched what was on, like it was 1972. Add to this the invasion of retail media into the media economy, which is going to add tons of new money. So retail media traditionally has been those floor stickers and shelf hangers and sky hangers inside grocery stores and supermarkets and Boots and Tesco's. But now it is Amazon. Amazon did $42 billion in retail media advertising last year. By the way, Walmart did $4 billion in retail media advertising last year. By the way, Walmart just bought Vizio, a television company. So when every impression or every piece of content is now just the front door to a retail environment, and that's all driven by walled garden data, this experience is not going to get better for us as consumers. It's going to get worse. It's going to get more confusing, more difficult to deal with. These walled gardens are not helping us. And we need a radical transformation for the way that we do business. This is very reminiscent of a long ago era, the Roaring 20s, the Great Depression, and the post-war era, where the greed of capitalists created a crash that forced the world to save ourselves from ourselves, both societally and from a media perspective, from a corporate perspective. We are back at that era again. We are at a point of inflection where radical intervention and radical transformation are necessary. What does that mean? It means radical transparency. It means collaboration and interoperability between companies. It means stop treating consumers' data like it's ours and not theirs. The data that we collect from consumers is not ours. It is their birthright. It is their property, and we need to stop using tricky terms and conditions into fooling them to think otherwise, because that is absolutely wrong. Also, by the way, if we take down the walls around this data and we set it free and we commingle it and we cooperate and we're more transparent about it, the ecosystem, just like when we created the radical change in the post-war era and saved the capitalists from their own worst intentions, this will also help everybody in the ecosystem. It will help the consumer and the user, but it will also make the ecosystem better and more profitable. It'll lower churn. It'll increase the efficacy of every ad. It'll make it easier to sell ads and buy ads, and it'll be way easier to measure the efficacy and outcomes of those ads on the other side. It will be better for the user and the companies that run these ecosystems. What does this look like? It looks like the Easy Pass, and I know a lot of you from Europe, so you may not know what an Easy Pass is, but it is a thing you stick with Velcro on your windshield that allows you to go through the toll booths without touching your wallet. 19 different states collaborate transparently to create one Easy Pass system. These are state governments in the United States who don't typically get along with each other, right? Rather than having to carry 19 different passes in their glove boxes, consumers have one pass, and they can go anywhere they want in these 19 states seamlessly. That's what consumers deserve. If we free up the data, if we create true interoperability, if we create and force true collaboration across boundaries in the media ecosystem, every single user experience will be more personalized. When I log onto a streaming service now, it doesn't show me the last show I was watching on that streaming service. What the fuck, right? Let alone do my preferences go with me from Netflix to Hulu to Apple TV+, or from Roblox to Fortnite to PUBG, right? Or Candy Crush to Wordle or any of these other places. Why? Why don't we have an Easy Pass? Why? Because the incentives are incredibly misguided, miscalculated, and they're not working for us. There are huge advantages to freeing up this data and taking down those walls, both for the users and for the companies who operate in this ecosystem. There are also enormous existential threats if we do not. The walled gardens we started creating 2 decades ago have destroyed the trust that consumers have in media, like the lymph nodes destroyed my appendix. They have eroded the faith that consumers have in the platforms that are supposed to be the watchdogs of the governments that are supposed to keep us safe. Just like the bile really destroyed my internal system when it leaked into my body cavity. Mistrust, this is a Gallup chart tracking trust from 1972. This is Americans, from 1972 through today. And you can see right in the middle there where social media came along, the walled gardens were erected, and trust absolutely was destroyed. There is a ton of research that demonstrates that a free, fair, safe, equitable, unpaid media and the faith that people have in that media in their countries, and a lot of you are from Europe, so you know this better than I do, is directly correlated to the health of their democracies. And as a result, what's happened is this lack of faith, this erosion of belief in our media has enabled these absolutists to emerge, to take advantage of this lack of faith and turn the media on itself to destroy the institutions we created to keep us safe and to bring democracy to an ignominious end. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic, pick up a history book. We've been through this story before. The plot gets really dark before the lights come back on. And this time the lights might not come back on. So this isn't just about selling more subscriptions or pushing more impressions or making more money. This is about media's responsibility to the world in which it exists. It is crucial that we make these changes. And by the way, I don't think the kind of radical transformation I'm pushing for here is going to be easy. I don't want to make it seem like I think it would be. It is going to be difficult, but the stakes are that high. So the transformation should be that hard. You no longer have any signs of cancer in your body. you won't need treatment for a very long time. This was as you can tell, I'm very rarely without words, but I was speechless. And it seems like a miracle, right, this drug, but it's not. The transformation, the radical transformation I needed to go to was both painful and really, really difficult. And it was a transformation. It wasn't just a procedure. The guy literally had to take my belly button off, put it on a side table, go inside, open everything up, take out 2 feet of intestine, and then put the belly button back in a new place. I am literally physically a different person than I was 2 weeks ago, right? That's the kind of transformation. That's the kind of treatment. That's the kind of radical change that is necessary in this ecosystem right now. Not tomorrow, not 2 years from now, not a half a decade away, but today. And it's going to take, frankly, I believe, a new brand of leadership in order to affect the kind of radical transformation, radical transparency, radical change, radical treatment that is necessary to fix what's wrong with this ecosystem. If we put the users at the center of everything that we do, we can make this work. This isn't about technology. This is about mentality. This is about knowing we must change and knowing that we will, not thinking that we might, maybe we should, let's see. But if we put the user at the center of everything that we do, we can make these changes happen. The transformation I went through was painful and it was difficult. But given the choice between taking on that pain and that challenge and making that change and surviving, or not making that change and not making those changes and not surviving, I'm pretty sure I made the right choice. We'll see. That's my take on the user-centric era. You can pause there for a second so I can breathe. I want to bring 2 guests to the stage for examples for the type of transparency and transformation and collaboration that I'm talking about. Come on up on stage here. So I have Sarah Yu and Daniel. Say your last name for me.
Schultz.
Daniel Schultz. Sarah is the head of Future Media Hubs, our co-presenter for the day. Can you give me just a couple seconds on what Future Media Hubs is, why it exists, and what the fuck you do?
I can. So hello everyone, we are Future Media Hubs. We are an international network of public service media and commercial media organizations that exchange and innovate on different topics. So we have, as you can see there, 5 different hubs. We have over 50 member organizations in Europe, some beyond, and more than 150 individuals following our sessions. So there's one on new technology, a lot of AI in there. There's one on the next generation. Who are these people? Where can we find them? How can we better interact with them? There's one on news, so everything related to disinformation, citizen journalism, and so on. Then we have startups and scale-ups. How can we help them grow? And last but not least, gaming.
Why did you do this?
Well, our ambition is that, and you also saw it yourself, Evan, in an era where technological advancements and consumer behaving is evolving rapidly, there is a critical need for a unified approach in media innovation, definitely across Europe as well. So we believe that media organizations, that they really have to join forces if they want to have clear impact for the end user and if they want to remain relevant. So that's why we built
And you have a good case study here in Roblox that you created. Can you talk a second about that?
Yeah, these are colleagues of mine who have created a game in Roblox for the children from 6 to 12 years. And so basically, we were unable to reach these younger audiences. So we go there to the platform as a public service media. For us, it's really important, because I come from VRT, by the way, Flemish public broadcaster. It's really important to reach these audiences where they are and to bring them in a safe environment. So we built this game. And we talk about different topics in the game, like bullying, make sure that is handled, we track the data, and so on. And what is important with this case, because I can tell so much more about it, but is that we're doing this, but at the other side, at YLE, for example, the Finnish public broadcaster, they're doing similar experiences and elsewhere other experiences. And through our hub, we bring these people together make sure that there are experiments that go beyond the borders.
And you're sharing data, and you're sharing best practices, and everything I was just talking about, collaboration.
Yeah, so we now got, for example, a fund from the EBU, making sure that each of these partners can build worlds in Roblox with all of their local IP, and then they really open the doors to go from the Flemish content to the Finnish content to the Danish content, and that's the experiment we're doing right now. So our main ambition is to bring all these smart people together and make sure we build something stronger.
Awesome. Daniel, your company is Footprint Intelligence, which attacks something that is one of my big issues in the environmental movement, which is greenwashing. And if you don't know, greenwashing, especially in media, are companies pretending to be green, putting out like really great press releases or Instagram posts, and then not really following up or really tracking the efficacy of their efforts. But you found a way to use data in particular and kind of radical transparency as a way to attack this major issue, yeah?
Exactly.
All right, then you're done.
We are a data company too. And as you mentioned before, like the first thing we touch in the morning is our smartphones. Meaning every interaction we have there has an impact. And for an individual, it might be quite minor, but on a global scale, the digital footprint is by now higher than the carbon emissions of the whole aviation worldwide. And everyone knows that flying is bad. So what we kind of do is we help media.
Hold that for a second.
Yeah.
So digital media usage now has a bigger carbon footprint than aviation.
Exactly.
It's like, write that shit down.
And this is exactly what we focus on. So you see 3 steps here in the back. We help media companies who, as mentioned, on an individual level, it might be not that big, but if you're a big media agency, for example, you have millions of views, clicks, impressions worldwide, then it's really important also to measure that, to know what can be improved, what's actually effective, what's user-centric, and what's worth throwing out, maybe. And this is what we help with.
And you have a couple of case studies here that you wanted to talk about?
Exactly, like this just shows a little bit what we do. So in the media value chain, you talked about that before, the complexity of various servers and various of transmission, end-user devices, it's getting complex. And calculating carbon emissions for a company who's using, for example, AWS, Google, Azure, whatever, in the back, it's very, very complex deriving carbon emissions from that base. And we are helping, for example, a media agency, Group 1 in Europe, to calculate all that and report on that, and then improve in the next step.
And the only way we can get to true improvements is if we cooperate, we have transparency around the data we use, and we use that data to drive us as opposed to pretending we're addressing the problem and figure it out. But users are going to increasingly look to media companies to be a part of the solution, not just a part of the problem, right?
I agree. And I think like media companies have such a reach, so if they don't act as role models, like who should? I mean, they are influencing so many people every day. And I really totally believe that this is the spot we should start with to kind of spread into all different industries, even though it might not be the very biggest footprint at first, but they're influencing.
So here are 2 examples of collaboration, transparency, openness. These are words that not everybody understands in the media ecosystem, but they need to start adopting as core principles of their DNA. Thank you both very much for coming to the stage. I'll shepherd you off. Be careful, please. Again, I want to thank VideoAmp and Amagi for helping us out in making this possible. Amagi's sponsoring a great panel coming up at 11:30, not too long from now. New Media Experiences, the Future of Storytelling and Monetization. We've got panelists from around the world, literally. And the key idea here is how do we operate in this user-centric era while keeping the economics not just good for us, but growing. Not just surviving, but thriving. I want to thank you all very much for coming today. I hope this was useful to you. This is very cathartic for me. Thanks so much. We'll see you in about an hour.